7 Secrets of the Goddess by Devdutt Pattanaik. Chapter 6 Saraswati's Secret. Imagination can expand or contract the mind. Part 2. Many scholars trace the modern Saraswati to Tara, a Buddhist goddess, who had a major role to play in the transformation of Buddhism. Buddha was initially uncomfortable with the female form and women in general. Women were seen as daughters of Mara, the demon of desire. Gradually, Buddha softened, especially after he saw the sorrow of his stepmother when his father died, and so he allowed women to be part of the monastic order. Still, women played a secondary role. With the rise of the Mahayana, the later school of Buddhism, the idea of a feminine force that empathizes with humanity and is less intellectual in its approach emerged. This was Tara. Like Parvati, Tara is known for her ability to turn the indifferent monk into an engaged savior. Like Lakshmi, Tara holds a lotus in her hand. But she is, like Saraswati, renowned as the embodiment of prajna, or wisdom. Saraswati was closely associated with dancers, musicians and courtesans, as she was seen as the mother of the arts and theatre. Through songs and plays and literature, she could evoke a variety of aesthetic experiences, rasa, in the audience that could grant both entertainment and enlightenment at the same time. This is one reason why, in Bengal, she was associated with Kartikeya, who was visualized as an affluent rasik, connoisseur of the arts, who frequented the house of talented singers and dancers. But as monastic orders rose in India, knowledge was divided into pure knowledge that grants spiritual bliss, yoga, and impure knowledge that arouses the senses and generates wealth, bhoga. The former was associated with priests, philosophers, ascetics, and devotional poet saints, while the latter was associated with entertainers, dancers, singers, musicians, and performers. The former came to be more associated with Saraswati, and the latter more with Vidya Lakshmi, vocational and transactional knowledge. This is one reason why commercial artists have historically been frowned upon. Art for them is about making money and not expanding the mind. This disdain for the commercial artist is the reason why the nut, entertainer, or the ganika, courtesan, was always looked upon with suspicion. This suspicion, combined with the puritanical nature of the Victorian era, led to the banning of Devdasi practices and of classification of the caste of entertainers as criminal tribes in British India. In Vaishnav literature, Lakshmi became Bhoga Patni, who entraps with pleasure, and Saraswati became Moksha Patni, who liberates with wisdom. Stories emerged in Bhagavad Parampara of how Krishna has to balance the demands of his rich wife, Satyabhama, and his gentle, wise wife, Rukmini. For the audience, the rich Satyabhama who dominates and shows off her wealth is Lakshmi, while the poor Rukmini who has nothing except devotion and wisdom is Saraswati. One belief related to Saraswati that is common in almost every Hindu household is this: she never stays in the same house as Lakshmi, as they quarrel all the time. The difference between the two goddesses is stark. Lakshmi is dressed as a bride in red, embellished with ornaments. Saraswati is dressed as a widow in white, with no regard for ornamentation, even though artists deck her with crystal beads and white flowers. Lakshmi is attractive, while Saraswati is aloof. Lakshmi comes and goes on a whim, but can be held in place using force and cunning. Saraswati comes only with great effort, but once she comes, she does not leave. In one folk tale, tired of the quarrels between his two wives, Vishnu separates them by placing Saraswati on his tongue and Lakshmi in his heart, or some say his feet. Thus he gets the best of both, the invisible Saraswati and the visible Lakshmi. The quarrel revolves around this one single idea. What matters more in worldly life, wealth or knowledge? This quarrel can be traced to the conflict between 3 major Vedic communities: the Brahmins, who were keepers and transmitters of Vedic knowledge; the Kshatriyas, who were warriors and so held bows and rode chariots; and the Vaniks, or Vaishyas, who were traders and so had access to wealth. In other words, this conflict was not just about Saraswati of the Brahmins and Lakshmi of the Vaishyas, but also Durga of the Kshatriyas. It resonates a deeper philosophical question. What really matters in society? Knowledge, wealth, or power? At the root of this conflict is the human desire to dominate. Why do humans seek to dominate? Animals dominate so as to get more access to food and mates. They cannot help themselves. It is inbuilt as part of nature's survival strategy. Humans, however, have the choice whether to dominate or not. And this choice comes from imagination, from Saraswati. With imagination, humans come up with ideas and inventions that enable them to create surplus food. So there is really no need for a pecking order. There is enough for everyone to go around. And yet, humans want to dominate. This comes from a deeper anxiety, a unique human anxiety, the quest for identity. Who am I? This quest also comes from Saraswati. Animals have no doubt about where they are in nature's food chain and pecking order. But the imagination of humans creates doubts. Every human being can imagine themselves in a particular way, but those around may not imagine them in the same way. This creates conflict. We seek to impose and assert our imagining of ourselves on others. We want others to see us as we see ourselves. In early societies, strength and cunning was used to dominate. But later, with surplus wealth, the idea of property emerged. He who had more property could dominate even the strong and the smart. Property could be inherited, and so one did not really need strength, skill, or even cunning to acquire it. Social laws and concepts of ethics and morality ensured no one could usurp someone else's property. This secured the wealth of the wealthy. So, naturally, those who inherited wealth did not care much for knowledge. They did not even care for strength, skill, or social status. With wealth, everything could be bought, even people who were strong, skilled, talented, and beautiful. One group of people suffered greatly because of the rise of the importance of property. They were the keepers of Vedic lore. Vedic hymns had to be transmitted orally. They could not be written down as scripts could not adequately capture the intonations of Vedic mantras. This meant the entire day was spent chanting hymns using various techniques known as Padapatha. The focus remained so much on chanting that even understanding the hymns was ignored. Such a community dedicated to secure Vedic lore had no time to generate wealth for themselves. Wealth came only in the form of gifts and donations. Thus the idea emerged that where there is Lakshmi, there is no Saraswati, and where there is Saraswati, there is no Lakshmi. Over time, Vedic priests created vocations for themselves, became astrologers, grammarians, temple priests, scribes, and bureaucrats to generate Lakshmi for their households. But the relationship with wealth remained a tricky one. It was seen as corrupting and distracting. Strangely, no one noticed that even knowledge can be corrupting and distracting, because those who were too busy memorizing and transmitting the Vedic hymns and rituals remained clueless about their meaning or significance. Vedic knowledge is all about expanding the mind, outgrowing fear, in the quest for self-realization. As long as the mind is contracted, there is fear, and hence the desire to dominate. While the Kshatriyas dominated society using power, Durga, and the Vaishyas dominated society using their wealth, Lakshmi, the Brahmins dominated society by claiming to be purer than others as they were keepers of esoteric knowledge, Saraswati. This hierarchy of purity is unique to Indian society, and it wreaked havoc in Indian society. Everything that the Brahmin could not partake of as the keeper of Vedic lore became a source of impurity. Meat, alcohol, sexual pleasure, wealth, property, trade, even vocations that involved physical labor and contact with nature. So the purest man was one who shunned all things worldly and material. Impurity became contagious, and so to establish purity, the Brahmin avoided contact with all things impure. He isolated himself from other communities and even from his own wife when she was menstruating, with a feeling of superiority. This idea caught on and spread across all communities. Everyone who wanted to climb up the social ladder realized it was possible to do so even without wealth and power or even knowledge, by simply embracing the concept of purity. The pure would look down upon the impure. Eventually, communities or jatis started locating themselves on the purity hierarchy. On top were the Brahmins. At the bottom were a whole bunch of professions such as tanners, cobblers, sweepers, toilet cleaners, butchers, who were considered so impure that they were even denied access to the village well. Thus, Saraswati, who was supposed to expand the human mind and help humans discover Atma, ended up becoming the cause of contracting the human mind and amplifying Aham. Self-awareness was overshadowed with self-delusion. The draconian caste system became the hallmark of Hinduism. It continues to haunt Hinduism today as people continue to strive to be purer. To be pure is to assume there is dirt in the world. Dirt is a cultural concept, not a natural one. In Tantra, where Devi worship takes center stage, great value is therefore given to what is shunned by purity-conscious mainstream society. Thus the goddess is offered meat and alcohol and blood. Even menstrual blood, seen as dirty and polluting by most communities, is seen as sacred and auspicious. It is described, as everything else in nature, as valid, satyam, energizing, shivam, and beautiful, sundaram. To outgrow the human need to dominate using wealth, status, knowledge, beauty, success, and notions of purity is to truly let Saraswati flow in our minds. Chapter 6, Saraswati's Secret. Imagination can expand or contract the mind. Part 1.
Chapter 7, Brahma's Secret. Human life is an opportunity. Part 2.